Hello, I'm Gita Strausberg and producer and host of the Strausberg Report that's part of the PCC TV network. And I have a very special guest today, and that's Representative Ford. Representative Ford from the 8th Legislative District, and he's running for congressman of the 7th Congressional District.
That's right. I'm excited. After 19 years, it'll be 20 years at the end of this term that I actually had the honor to represent people in Illinois and the people of the 8th Legislative District as a Democrat.
Yes, the Democrat Representative LaShawn Ford. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Strasburg Report. You are under attack right now by the crypto pack. Can you explain why someone would raise $190 million to go after the Democrats? I can understand that, I guess, but then 1.5 million to make sure that you don't get elected. Who does that?
Well, I think people that understand that they want to protect their business and their business interests, they're multi-billionaires and, they have their interests lie with their wealth and they know my voting record. So the difference here is they put it out in the open that because he voted to regulate cryptocurrency, we're going to spend $1.5 million to defeat him from going to Washington, because that's where the regulations are really, really implemented. When you pass federal regulations for cryptocurrency, it becomes a different industry.
So is this tied to Trump in any way?
I think that we could follow the money and we could say that Trump and his family um, invest or have interest in cryptocurrency. It's lucrative. And I think we could follow the money, and I think we'll see that Trump and his family and friends actually um, have an interest in it. And so Trump is not for regulations of cryptocurrency. And so the blood money that's been put out in my race to kill my campaign is, it's your friend and your leader, the late Harold Washington would say, politics ain't beanbags. But, and I don't mind being attacked on my voting record, but don't lie on me and don't make me out of a fraud when I'm not a fraud, especially when the Department of Justice said we're throwing out 17 counts of bank fraud against LaShawn Ford. But yet they do a commercial sending a message that I'm a convicted felon.
How did you feel when you saw that?
You know, it was a rough day because it took me back to probably one of the darkest days of my life. It was years of investigation and um and then living with the indictment and going to all the court hearings, um and then the DOJ dropping all charges. I commend them, because they could have vigorously just dug in and made up lies and convinced the jury that I was guilty of something that I wasn't. What this situation has taught me is that there are people incarcerated right now in federal and state prisons that's innocent, but they had to take a plea deal in order to lessen the time that they were being offered.
I'm glad you brought that up because during my time as a reporter, I covered a story about Lorenzo Turner. This was an African American man, never been arrested, had 19 dry cleaners. He bought the last one from a white dry cleaner, and something happened to him. He disappeared. There's no body found, but he was charged and convicted of murder, and he had 20 years, and it took me 12 years to get him out of prison, And it was only through the help of Representative Monique Davis, because everybody else said, "You're wasting your time." Talked to judges, lawyers, and they said, "You're wasting your time." This man, while he was in prison, he lost his wife, Ophelia, from ovarian cancer, and his son committed suicide. But they only did that because he was Black. Do you think that you were targeted because you're a Black elected official?
Well, I would tell you that in the words of the late Thomas Durkin, my lawyer that passed away, he called it racist. And he said that the only reason why LaShawn is being targeted in this case is because he's a Black man and a politician. And so I'll leave it to the words of my attorney to hang that on.
Absolutely. And Lorenzo Turner, by the way, was sentenced to 220 years, and the judge said he would never set foot on free ground again. Well, congratulations. You are free of that, and I am so glad. Tell us about now. You used to be a teacher, right?
I was a teacher at Chicago Public Schools.
Elementary or high school?
Junior high. Yes. Yep. I taught junior high school. And that's the thing. When you look at the actual commercial against me, one, they make me look scary. You know, the way they darken the image and make you look really scary to some people. And had I been convicted of felony charges, that would have lost my teacher license, my real estate license, my financial license. So
After you taught school, how long did you teach school?
I taught school 6 years,
6 years.
Chicago Public Schools.
And then what did you do after that?
Then I opened my own real estate company, and I had a very, very successful business where I had a good relationship with a bank, Sure Bank, and I was able to build a strong business with 65 agents working under the brokerage,
Wow.
as well as 3 locations. At one time, I had 4 locations. And so I understand business. I understand how to run a business and work with people. Anytime you could have 65 agents of professionals and manage it and do well and help a lot of those families send their young people to college. So being able to manage a business and manage the professionals and, my profession as a teacher, being able to manage young people,
Yeah.
that's a, a honor to do, but it's also challenging because children have their personalities and they don't have filters sometimes, but you have to do your best to educate them. I would tell you my greatest profession at all um, would be the most rewarding would be teaching than a politician. I mean, teaching is great because you get to change lives, mold lives, work with families, and then you go and you do politics where you get to change laws to help families is unbelievable. I'll be in um, history books about laws that I passed to help families in Illinois. And so you have those two. I did enjoy the luxury of making money, but those days were not as rewarding as teaching and being a lawmaker.
Absolutely. Now, one of the legislation that one of the bills that you passed was the people who went into other people's houses.
Oh, the squatter law.
Yes.
The squatter law is a big law that people are excited about. They're happy that it's on the books. Still a lot of work that we have to do with squatter law because when you have people that break into homeowners' places,
Yeah.
they go in with the intent to win
And to stay.
and to stay. And so there are still ways that we can strengthen the law, but the law today is helping homeowners that could catch a trespasser within 24 to 48 hours. You have to be very vigilant and monitor your property, because once a person gets in that property
Mhm.
and they move furniture in and they get the lights turned on, the gas turned on, then guess what happens? They set up a residency and they become a tenant. And now you got to put them out in the court. And how do they do that? They make false leases. And so we have to figure out how we're going to improve the squatter law.
So the squatter law is only for 24 to 48
Well,
hours
it could be it's easier to get them out in that time frame,
within their time frame.
because then they're really, you got them as a trespasser before they establish any type of residency and start getting mail. I mean, you could get, if I called the utility company today, I could probably get lights on today. And then automatically you're going to get a letter in the mail with your name that's going to come within a week. And now you have uh, established that as your home. I've been working with the utility companies to try to see if they would be willing to put a code on each property. So if you are the owner of the property and you did not sign that lease, because the problem is they're making bogus leases and they're sending them in to the utility company. So if if he writes a bogus lease out to somebody and they use it and to the tenant, you know what I mean? And then what happens once they do that? What would happen? The utility companies will allow it. But what happens then if you do that? My goal is to say that if you are a landlord and you didn't give access to that property, then you give a code. And so, for instance, once the bogus lease is presented, they fax it to the utility company. The utility company will say, what's the code on the property? Then the tenant or the squatter will not know the code and they won't turn on the lights.
I see. So if the utility company will send the letter to the owner.
No, then no letter will even be established, because they'll say, hey, this lease that you have did not come from the actual owner, because the actual owner put a code on this property
Uh,
and the code is number 50. And so when you fax that lease over that was written by a person to another person, they will actually ask for the code. No, lease looks great, right? But then they will say, okay, we're ready to turn on the lights or the gas. What's the code? And if you don't give them the right code, then the lights don't come on. And that helps the homeowner, because then the homeowner won't have to worry about the squatter setting up residency, because that's what becomes the problem.
so when are you going to introduce that bill?
We're working on it, working with housing advocates. Housing advocates really don't like the bill where you are putting people out. So it's a tough bill. But we have to look at how this situation is a safety problem, where you have people coming in and taking folks' properties. Illinois is a concealed carry state, and people come in with their guns. So we don't want people to get killed in this situation.
Absolutely. So what are your other bills that you've passed?
Well, I think one bill that helps people all over Illinois and every community, every demographic, is that Illinois seal bill, where people could get their felony sealed in Illinois. And that's huge because it's so big that we actually passed what you call a clean slate, so that you don't have to wait 3 years to get it sealed. It becomes automatic after uh, 6 months.
So this is for people who did what kind of
Oh,
crimes?
well, class felony kept crimes.
Oh,
Yep. And they, when I passed the bill in 2014, the goal was to automatically get it sealed right away. But the advocates and the courts and the prosecutors said, we need to give it 3 years. Let's let people actually have 3 years to see if they reoffend. But what we found is when people get their record sealed, they don't reoffend anyway. And so now we don't have to worry about bagging up the courts where people have to go before the court to present and then the judge sign off. It's going to be automatic now.
But that's great.
And of course, I know that you were a part of helping us with the HIV and AIDS bill, where we made HIV and AIDS a routine screening of our health. We met over at the Defender many times to actually work on that legislation. And so what we did to lower and get to zero of HIV and AIDS in Illinois, we say when you go in to get your regular blood work, then we're going to do a HIV test unless you opt out. So many people have gotten diagnosis of HIV and they could go right to treatment. And when you go to treatment, you become like Magic Johnson, undetectable, and you live longer and you live a normal life. And, their science say that you can actually have normal sex because you are not going to be passing it on because it's undetectable in your blood. And so we want everyone, if you have, um, if you're risky, you should be tested. And if you're tested and you're positive, it's not a death sentence because science is better. And we know, looking at Magic Johnson, the late Arthur Ashe didn't beat the disease, but science is better now. You see, Magic had become a billionaire since he was announced that he had AIDS. The other one that we've been fighting is to fight the deaths of the opioid and the heroin crisis. We have been working very hard at making sure that people have access to a life-saving drug called Narcan. And we've been doing it on the west and south side and in the suburbs, the proviso. What we have done also is train people to use Narcan and meet people where they're at so we can lead them to recovery. So the West Side Heroin and South Side Heroin Opioid Task Force have really helped get people that's struggling with heroin addictions to treatment for recovery. And it's actually been noted that the work that we've been doing has lowered the deaths of people using heroin on the west side of Chicago. But we still have a challenge with Black men. Black men is still on the rise, but every other race and gender is down.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, that's a long story, and Black men are under pressure, of course. I mean, not saying that they're under more pressure than other people, but studies show that the unemployment rate for Black men is high. Studies show that the criminal justice system is harsher on Black men.
Yes.
And chances of Black men being gainfully employed is harder. But we can't make excuses. America's been good to a lot of Black men. And so we have to be there for everyone and make sure everybody has the ability to be heard, seen, and helped.
And you also a single father.
I am. My daughter is 22 soon. Yes.
She's following your footsteps.
Yes, she's gonna be a teacher. In fact, she's already got a job teaching. She's going to come back to Chicago and be a Chicago public school teacher. She's already got a real estate license, Illinois real estate broker. So I'm proud of her. Well, we are. I have a great co-parenter and her mother.
That's awesome. So also I wanted to find out how you felt about Trump in his administration.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, Trump, I would
And
tell
ICE people.
yeah, I would tell you elections have consequences. Voting right and voting for America's best interests is not voting for Trump. Trump is, I think he definitely is un-American. I think that we could tie Trump to the Confederacy. He could fit right in with the Confederacy. Um, but our democracy is strong. I think that we're lucky to have a system of the courts that's checking some of his executive orders. And so I'm confident that this is not just about Trump. It's about getting those Republicans out of Congress and winning the House back. And when we hear people just talk about, I'm going to fight Trump, I'm going to fight Trump. Well, I mean, that's fine. You can fight Trump, but Trump, he doesn't vote on any bills. I think that we have to make sure that people recognize that we have to put pressure on the Congress because they are the ones that vote on legislation. And as we see, when Trump signed the executive order to take away child care funding, the courts said no. When Trump had his executive orders for tariffs, the court said no.
Yes.
And so the legislative body has to do its job to fight Trump. And so I want to join Congress to make sure that we pass legislation that is good for America. Trump is not good for America. I mean, when you asked also about ICE, I mean, this ICE should absolutely be abolished, and I think that Democrats and Republicans have to do everything that we can to have comprehensive immigration reform because, you know, not having comprehensive immigration reform is not good for humanity. We have to make sure that we help people come to America and be welcomed to America. And when they get here, however they get here, that we treat them humanely.
How do you feel about their killing 2 Americans and then shooting 3 others?
Well, you mean ICE?
Nice.
That goes to show you that their power is unchecked. And I, you know, I think that America has to look at that and say, wow, this is what Black people have been going through. And I think that the late Dr. King said, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So while there's been an injustice with Black people, now it's a threat to everybody. And so I hope that we're able to see what's happening in America and unite regardless to where we think we stand in America, whether we think we're safe, whether we think that we're okay. I hope they see and everyone see that we're not, if all of us are not.
So what do you tell voters in this usually the primary, they don't come out? What do you tell the voters?
Voters, I mean, you hear people say, my vote don't count. Well, those are people that don't vote and their vote won't count. So I tell people, if you want your vote to count, vote because it will count. 90 million people in America chose not to vote in the last election, and we got Trump that has cut funding to childcare, higher education, K through 12, mental health, substance use treatment, and also he's cut funding to violence prevention programs, devastating state budgets, devastating city and county budgets, and cutting health care in America, making it harder to be insured, cutting the healthcare subsidy for businesses in America, making it unaffordable. Maybe some businesses and home owners and families may pay 2, 3, 4 times um, as much as they were paying before Trump was president. And so when people say that Barack Obama didn't do anything for black people, I think that people should know that more black people got health insurance because of Barack Obama.
Absolutely. And you're gonna be working with the co-conspirators. How do you gonna deal with that?
Oh, that's what government is. You have to. I've done it in Springfield, where you fight back and you educate and you bring in coalitions to win. I mean, January 6th, they came back with a vengeance and elected their president. People got to organize. People have to know that their vote matters, and people have to recognize when they vote, they should have demands on their government. You don't just vote, elect them, and leave them. You elect them, organize, and get your agenda passed.
Absolutely. So what do you tell voters? Look in the camera and tell them what what do you want from them? And why should they vote for you?
I think at this time that we're mourning the death of Reverend Jesse Jackson, I think that everyone should recognize, despite in the struggle of John Lewis, the late John Lewis, the late Jesse Jackson, the late Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, all of these people during this Black History Month that fought and died. And just think about it, Jinta. Even Miss King, even Miss Jackson, the wives of the actual ministers, the sacrifices that they made for America, for us to have the right to vote. And I would urge people to um, do it for the struggle, do it for the blood that was shed. Vote and make it a family thing, make it a friend thing, and don't be a part of the 90 million people that actually threw away your right, that actually at some point in American history that they had roadblocks like a poll tax, like a literacy test, a straw. You can't imagine where we what we're giving up when we give up that right to vote. So I hope people will vote. I hope they'll vote for LaShawn Ford by punching 31, but vote. And if you're an adult, you have to be a role model to your children. You cannot be an American citizen and not vote and be a good role model, be a good role model to your children. That's what I believe. I think the children look at us and they follow. And I think we want our children to be voters and demonstrators and fighters for justice.
Well, very good. I'm so happy that you've been a guest on the Strausberg Report, and I wish you the very best on March the 17th. But I do urge people to vote early because Trump wants to put the ICE people around the polling places.
Mm. Well, early voting has started, and early voting comes into the Chicago wards and the different municipalities on March 2nd.
Right.
So that means that you'll be able to vote early in your home polling place instead of at the super site downtown.
Okay, thank you again, Representative LaShawn Ford from the 8th the Legislative District. He's going to Congress. I do believe that voters will see the truth and that it will elect a very good man that I've known a long, long time. Very decent man.
Thank you.
That's it for the Strasburg Report.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.